The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
The first item of business is the approval of the agenda.
Mayor,
Yes.
I'd like to make an amendment to the agenda.
Okay.
I'd like to add another item under board business. That'd be letter J. Consideration by the board of moving to a committee of the whole system for the budget committee.
Any other changes to the agenda?
Mr. Mayor and Board, for your consideration tonight, I would offer the following items for transfer to a consent agenda as follows. Page 2, Roman numeral 7, Mayor's Business A. Roman numeral 8, Board Business A and F. Roman numeral 9A, Airport, all 9 items. Number C, item 2. Excuse me a moment. Ms. Perkins,
Yes, sir.
did I understand that on D you wanted to discuss those items as
Yes,
opposed
sir.
to they being put on the consent?
Yes, sir.
Okay. E, personnel, all items 1 through 5. And Ms. Perkins, I understand for the police item.
Yes, sir, no consent.
Okay. Then F, Public Services, item 1. Wait a minute, we got 3 Fs here, just a second. D, E, F, G, Public Services, and H, Sanitation, both of those items. And I would offer that for your consideration.
Together with the amendment from the gentleman from Ward 4.
Together with that amendment, and that was an item J under board business. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Does anyone have any of those items, and of course take your time to look over them, that you would like to remove for consent, or other items that you would like to suggest be added to consent? Hearing nothing else, I would move that the agenda be approved with the addition of Alderman Corey's item under board business and the movement to the consent agenda of the items enumerated.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Do we have, all of you had the opportunity to look at the minutes and give Tammy the corrections?
I'd move approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 1st, 2007.
Second.
We have a motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Brings us to comments by the mayor. I'd like to suggest that this weekend, that we got a big weekend planned, that we have a super regional that will be placed here in Starkville. We're fortunate for that to happen here, and gives a lot of our alumni and fans the opportunity to take a look at our fine city. So we have a lot of positive things that continue to happen in our community. At this time, we allow citizens to come.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
just a comment. Question for, I know Interim Chief Mann isn't here, but Mr. Godin is. Could you comment a little bit about the burn ban, where we currently stand with that, and if someone would like to make a burn, how they would go about doing that?
Back, the burn ban's been lifted, I think it was effective Friday, when it was lifted. And I learned that today myself. So back to normal procedures for burns, you can contact City Hall, get a burn permit, contact the fire department.
Great, thank you.
We're to citizen comments. This is where citizens have 3 minutes to make a comment that they would like to have. If you want to come forward, state your name, your ward that you're in, and let us have your comments. Mr. Turner, how are you tonight?
Good evening to the Mayor and Board of Aldermen. My name is Adam Turner, Ward 7. The citizens, we have just a few comments. We see that we have come from 05 to 07, and we would like to see some things accomplished before 09. First, we were sort of upset with the president of Mississippi State and the mayor, but then after we read Columbus paper and Starkville paper, we found out the reason what happened with the shuttle bus. We found out the breakdown situation. And we still running about Lafayette Street, Jefferson Street, Dr. Conner Drive, and Martin Luther. Also, we're still waiting on clear picture on that. That's concerns of the citizens.
Anyone else that have any concerns of the city? If not, we'll move to our public appearances, and tonight we have 3 individuals to make a public appearance, and the first is Ms. Ginger Taylor regarding to the historical cemetery tour event called the Starkville Living Legends. Is she? I'll say what I know about it, but basically, Lynn, you probably have more information on that.
Well, no, Mayor, I had confirmation from her that she and Miss April, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the name, were both going to appear tonight, so I don't know.
Well, we can move to the next ones, and if they come in before the, basically, from what I understand, they were talking about the Oddfellow cemeteries and some of the grave sites and so forth of the legends that we've had here. If you've not been through the cemetery, it's kind of interesting. You see where whole families lost various children in World War II and plane crashes and things like that. It's kind of sad to see some of those things. Then we'll move to our presentation from Ms. Caroline King. I see her back there, in which she will be asking for a half-page ad for she is our Mississippi Junior Miss from Starkville that will be representing us in that contest. If you want to come up and give your presentation.
Well, I was selected as Starkville's Junior Miss back in February, and I'll be going to Meridian in late July to represent Starkville there at Mississippi's Junior Miss. And I would be honored if the city of Starkville would agree to purchase an ad that would be placed in the program book, and it would tout Starkville as a great place to live and work. I know they purchased one for Tory last year, so I would greatly appreciate if they consider doing that.
My, how you've grown up. My goodness.
My across-the-street neighbor, and she used to be out there shooting basketball and so forth, about 2 feet shorter than that. It's my pleasure to recommend to the board that we purchase a half-page ad in the Mississippi Junior Miss Program book to advertise the opportunities and resources of the city of Starkville, one of which, of course, is our Miss Junior Miss Carolyn King. In terms of the logistics of this sort of thing, given time frames, should her family have to advance the cost of this, then the payment would be made to the King family in reimbursement of this, of course, upon presentation of all the receipts and so forth for the city's purchase card system.
Are you making that in the form of a motion?
I said it was my pleasure to
Okay,
make it.
good.
Second.
And do we have a second?
Alderman Perkins.
Did he? Okay, excellent. All those in favor of the proposal say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. Thank you.
Have fun.
You'll be a great representative. Clark, are you here? I see you there, smiling from ear to ear. We're ready for your presentation regarding a request for an amendment to the existing fire alarm ordinance.
I brought copies of my statement. I didn't know if it was appropriate to give out or not, or I'll just read it, whatever you like.
Why don't you pass them out?
Pass them out. We got one for everybody.
Follow along and correct your reading.
Just give it to me, I'll pass it out.
Okay. My name's Clark Pittman, and I'm the president of Southern Alarming Communications here in Starkville, and we've been in the alarm business for 25 years, and I appreciate the board letting me come before y'all tonight, and I'd like to read a statement, and it's only 4 or 5 minutes long, and then if you have any questions on this issue, if it's appropriate, I'd be glad to try to answer them. Mayor and Board, thank you for the opportunity to come for you this evening to discuss the false alarm ordinance that was passed earlier this year. Let me first say that Bart Williams, the owner of Security Solutions, wanted to be here for this presentation, but had to be out of town. However, he has asked me to let you know that he would like to be associated with my remarks in this statement. I acknowledge that false alarms in Starkville have been at an unacceptable level for many years. As the 2 largest alarm companies in Starkville, we regret not doing more to reduce false alarms prior to this situation requiring action by the city. We also regret not becoming more involved in the creation of a solution for this issue before now. The ordinance that was passed has several aspects to it that we believe should be reconsidered. First, making it a criminal offense for exceeding 3 false alarms in a calendar year seems quite severe. I believe that some consideration has to be given to what caused the alarms and what the alarm owner is trying to do about preventing future false alarms. Even though the citation that the police department uses describes several situations in which a false alarm would not be counted, there are many more causes that are just as much out of the owner's control that are not mentioned. I believe the ordinance was written this way because at the time there was really no other venue to analyze the cause for false alarms other than in the city municipal court. 2, I have been unable to find any other ordinance in Mississippi that has as severe a fine and as low of number of these so-called free alarms. You should know that I believe any time, even on the first time, when an alarm causes a false dispatch to the owner, the owner should explain as best he can what caused the false dispatch and what he has done to keep it from happening again. 3, I believe some consideration has to be given to the fact that some businesses or properties require extremely large and complex systems. Several systems around town have 30 to 40 as many components and users as typical residential or small business alarm systems. These systems are much more likely to exceed the number of free false alarms. Even business owners or citizens who appear in city court and successfully defend their number of false alarms and convince the court that they are taking steps to minimize their number of false alarms their systems create must pay around $140 in court costs, even if the judge agrees with their position. And they have to do this each time a false alarm occurs for the remainder of that calendar year. Having now spent around 6 hours in city court on 4 different occasions with several different alarm owners, all of which have some of the largest properties to protect, I have observed that the court is quite busy, and I believe enforcement of this ordinance in this way is not a good use of the city court. I predict that even though only 4 or 5 alarm owners have been summoned to court as of the writing of this letter or this statement, not less than 30 or 40 will be summoned in the next few months. I come before you tonight to ask that the board authorize the city court to suspend any further action until further consideration can be given to the points raised in this statement. I'm further suggesting that the board create a task force or committee to propose a plan for the reduction of false alarms. I believe this committee should be made up of 6 persons, 1 from the police department, 1 from the fire department, 2 from the alarm companies doing business in town, 1 business owner, and 1 residential alarm owner. I'm suggesting 2 from the alarm companies because I believe that they can have the biggest impact on the reduction of false alarms. I believe that this task force should be accountable to the board or the police and fire chiefs and give a quarterly report as to the progress of false alarm reduction. In the event that a business or individual has been determined by this task force to be uncooperative in its willingness to reduce this number of false alarms, there are existing laws that could be used against this alarm owner to require compliance. Having had a long discussion with Ron Walters of the Security Industry Alarm Coalition, SEAC as it's called, whose organization since 2003 has been involved in the creation or evaluation of over half of the 2,400 alarm ordinances that are currently enforced countrywide, he said the most successful ordinances are those in which the police and fire departments work closely with the alarm companies to reduce false alarms. Thank you for your time this evening, and I'll be glad to try to answer any questions that you have.
Board members have questions they'd like to ask Mr. Pittman?
Mr. Pittman, I have no objection to this if this is what the board wants to do, but one thing I'd like to respectfully point out, I would like to see the board, if they do this, and have a committee for the city to have the majority membership on the committee. Right now, we would only have 2, 1 from the police department, 1 from the fire department. And you have 2 from alarm companies and 1 business owner, 1 from a residential owner. But I have no objection. I would support it, but I would, if it's the will of the board, to have a majority of the membership from. And the board may not see that, but I think that'll be viable. But whatever the board wants,
absolutely.
But I support the concept you want.
And that is just a suggestion, and to be honest with you, that came about for 2 reasons. One is we're trying to cause less of a burden for the city in the reduction of false alarms and not more of a burden by, putting more city personnel on there. So I agree with your point, and if that's the board's wishes, that's fine. But I did put the 2 alarm companies on there just because I believe that the real crux of what's got to happen to get these alarms reduced, and I hope that those in the room tonight will let you know, if you don't already, that false alarms have been drastically reduced and that this ordinance has been successful. And there's been some things in the paper that might lead you to believe that I'm against this ordinance. That is not true. I think that the city had to take this action. I just think that we're at a stage where some changes and some tuning up may need to happen, and maybe a different venue for taking a look at people who've exceeded the number of alarms.
Other questions?
Chief Lindley, your thoughts relative to this particular proposal as stated?
Mark and I continued to talk about this at length the other day. And he and I both agree that the alarms have got to be reduced. I have no problem with working with him and whoever that the board deems necessary. The alarm ordinance as it stands now is currently working. It's working well. It has cut back the number of alarms. I would remind the city that the police department alone last calendar year answered over 1,000 alarms, and if you consider the fact, of course, that they're only 365 days in a year, that's averaging, 3 or more a day. And I would remind you again of the research we did on the fact that it takes 2 officers to respond And sometimes when there's only 5 or 6 on duty, we actually pull officers away from legitimate calls for service. We also discussed some options. One thing that I think we might could do is this. Right now, we currently have a internal police policy that we go to answer alarms, even if the alarms are canceled, because we have no way of knowing if someone is holding the residential owner, store clerk, or whatever against their will and forcing them to cancel the alarm. This has happened, it's relatively frequent occurrence across the country. It's fortunately not here. Clark and I have worked on the concept of coming up with a liability waiver form where if the alarm owner would be willing to sign this and give this to the police department, I want to get Mr. Favor involved, and they sign off on it. If they call and cancel the alarm, we would in fact cancel it, where we don't now. This would do a number of things. It would reduce our response. It would give them the opportunity to cancel the alarm. It would also free us from any misfortune if in fact a crime was actually occurring and the person was saying that against their will. At least it released us from the fact that they would rather take that chance than have us respond. Now, I would also point out a couple of other things. We allow 3, as you might recall, free, if you will, alarms in a 12-month period. We enacted the ordinance and it went into effect March 1. We did not charge against any alarm owner for the months of January or February of this year. And so the customers that have appeared in city court already have already, in the month of March, April, and May, run through their 3 free alarms for the whole year. If you look at the list which I supplied Clark and his associate, you will see that the number of alarms are generated by a relatively small percentage of the alarm owners. In other words, habitual violators. And these are the ones that have shown up with over 3 violations in 3 months, whereas they should have a whole year. A vast majority of the commercial and residential customers don't have this problem at all. What we found, and I think Clark will agree with this, is usually what you have is either equipment failure or what is much more common is operator error. And the operator error seems to be the ones that are repeated over and over and over again. Now, granted, there is a $300 fine in court, but the judge, of course, in his discretion can do several things, and I've talked with Judge Ishii and Roy about this within the last 2 days. They can suspend, of course, they can find not guilty, and no fine at all other than the court fees. And court fees, of course, as long as you come through city court, those are state mandated, and we don't have any flexibility on that. But they can fine from $0 up to $300, or they can suspend any part of that fine, if not all of it. So it's not necessarily a $300 fine. I know that some people are concerned about the amount of money. I would really rather not fine anyone. I think we all agree on that. I certainly don't want to do anything punitive that would affect people's ability to protect themselves. On the other hand, if you think about the fact that out of the over 1,000 alarms we responded to in a 12-month period of 2006, and almost 95% of them, a little more than that actually, were false alarms, you literally have police officers running up and down the road endangering their lives, citizens' lives, liability, equipment, for the same people most of the time over and over and over again. And if there are no consequences to the misdeeds and actions of the people that hold these alarms, then it'll never come to an end. Now, Clark's asked you to stay the ordinance. The ordinance, and again, I remind you, I've talked with Judge Ishii and Roy within the last week. The ordinance is working well the way it is. I don't really think that we need to stay it. What I think we do need to do is get together with Clark, get this form adopted where people want us to cancel these alarms, we can. And in any new law, it takes a period of time before we see whether that law is going to be effective or not. For instance, if you put a stop sign up, you would not go and immediately start writing tickets there. You would allow a grace period for the public to get used to it, and then you would write tickets. Well, we've allowed a grace period, but the enforcement time on this hadn't been long enough to see how much of an effect it's really going to have. So if you're asking for my recommendation would be to let the ordinance stay as it's currently is. We'll continue to work with ways within the system to get people out of numbers of violations if they want to cancel these alarms and give us these forms, and hopefully these habitual violators will come around and not be as chronic a problem as they have been. And if this doesn't work and we're given a few more months to let this thing gel, then I think that's the time probably to try and change it. But I don't think we've had enough time right now to really evaluate what we've done. I think this is kind of a knee-jerk. I mean, I understand where Clark's coming from and all that, but we really don't know how well or not, not this alarm ordinance is going to work, because we haven't had it in effect long enough. And I think if we did away with it now, we would be in a disservice to the work that's already been done.
And I am not suggesting that we do away with the ordinance. I'm only suggesting that maybe a period of time be allowed to reconsider before we bring more people up in front of the city court. The chronic offenders, he's right. In fact, we believe probably something like 10% of the alarm owners in town probably account for 70 to 80% of the false alarms. It's a huge difference there. But what you've got to know is that these people that are and have in the past created a large number of these false alarms have taken very serious, decisive, time-consuming, expensive steps to reduce it. And I really would like to not name names here tonight, but most, I believe I'm right, have reduced their alarms by something in the neighborhood of 50 to 60% over where they were the same time last year. Some of the really bad abusers I'm talking about.
Right.
And I guess what I'm saying is, if you've got somebody that really is trying to do everything they can to reduce alarms, do you want to bring them before Judge Ishii to explain that each time they have a false alarm? Because the way the thing is designed right now, once you get the 3, they're going to go before Judge Ishii each time they get a citation. It's not going to be a 3-month time frame and then let's see how many they got now, let's go. We're going to go every time. And some of these people, I'm not prepared, like I said, to name names, but there's some that had just incredible amounts of alarms. I was one person in particular, a company in particular, I think that had, in the neighborhood of 100, 150 false alarms.
Sometimes their alarm would go off 3 times a night.
Right. And
they did nothing.
And that's right.
They did absolutely nothing. They wouldn't even come check the building.
Right.
To see if it was in fact all right or not. And that's the kind of ambivalence, apathy, and lack of response we've had out of these chronic violators. And that's why I'm recommending to y'all that we keep the ordinance as it is. And if enough consequences come across and it's inconvenient enough to them, then they'll either learn how to be a more effective operator, or they'll get their malfunctioning equipment up to task. Because ultimately what's going to happen is sooner or later an officer or a firefighter is going to be killed or run over somebody going to a false alarm. And I don't think we want that. On the other hand, I don't think we want to be punitive to our citizens, but some of them, realistic, y'all, just act like they could care less.
Can I interrupt? It sounds like that you've put thought into this, that
Yes.
you and Clark have had some degree of communication.
And we'll continue to work
And
closely
instead
together.
of us setting a committee up, which has to be all brought back into all this again, taking days and days and hours and months, is it not some way that the two of you can come up with a solution that may be acceptable to all of us.
Bringing into your discussion any appropriate people that might be necessary. Of course, the city
Right.
attorney would need to be necessary.
I think we can do this.
I think we can too. My only concern is the people that are lined up to go before the court right now, some that have already been there 2 times. And, I mean, is that, and I will tell you that these people have not said, Clark, we're not gonna fix it because we can't afford it. Clark, we're not gonna fix it because we don't think it's important. It's, what have we got to do to get these reduced? What can we do? Is it technical? Do we have to do more training? These are people that are concerned about the number of false alarms that they're generating and want to reduce them. So do you continue bringing that person before Judge Ishii to explain that?
I think so, Clark, to be honest with you, because if you're thinking about they've already had 3 a whole year's allotment, and it hadn't
Right.
even been 3 months. I mean, that pretty much speaks for itself. And as much as somebody says that they're trying to correct the problem, if they've had on average of 1 a month, and they know, and it's been well publicized in the paper before the alarm ordinance was passed, that, you know, this is a problem, and we're giving everybody a heads up on it. And besides that, really to not enforce a law, we would have to rescind the law, because it is law is passed as a local ordinance. Now, we can't just say, well, we're going to suspend the speeding law. I mean, this is passed as a criminal ordinance by the city, and I don't know that we really should try and rescind it, which is basically what it would take legally to, am I not right?
Get state enforcement of it.
Yeah.
if they want
I don't
to.
think that's
Don't
a good
have to
idea. I think that's sending the wrong message, to be honest with you. Of course, it's whatever's the pleasure of the board, but I think we're getting people to come into compliance, and within the next 60 days, maybe 90, I think that we'll have most of the problem cured if Clark and I are given a chance to come back with you probably in 60 to 90 days after we talked about this and tried to tweak it. I think we can work this out. We want to work it out.
Right.
I'd rather not, just like Clark said, go to any false alarms, although that's unrealistic. We're going to always have false alarms.
But I do think that we're talking about 10, 20, 30 alarm owners in this town that I do not see anywhere in the near future them being able to limit their number of alarms to 3 per year. Just don't. And so do those people have to pay? And maybe they do. That's y'all's wishes.
Why don't you give me a chance to sit down with you and talk about this at
Okay.
length? I really
You know,
can't see why we'd have 20 people in town that need over 3 free ones a year.
You know, it seems to me that the police chief and Clark ought to get together, bringing in whatever other resources they
Okay.
need, certainly
That's fine.
the city
I'm okay with
attorney, and come to us with any recommended, if
Right.
any, fine tuning
Right.
of anything we might need to do.
And just to put it
That
in
just seems
perspective.
the logical approach
Sure.
to the thing.
And
You
just to
can't-
put it in perspective before we finish, though, we do believe there's somewhere, we don't have an exact figure because there's not an alarm registration process in Starkville, but we do believe there's between 1,200 and 1,400 alarms in Starkville. And even though his department responding to 1,500 alarms in a calendar year is a huge number and a huge waste of their time, I'm willing to admit that.
And
When you put
taxpayers'
the
money.
taxpayers' money, when you do put that in perspective of the number of alarms in town, it doesn't sound quite as bad. And when you also consider that it is just I don't think very many people dispute that alarm systems do reduce crime. And we believe that if there were no electronic alarms in this town, that the city would be spending much more of its resources than they are right now on this.
And I'll agree with that. Alarms are a good deterrent, and I certainly am glad we got them. Clark and I do disagree on one thing. I think for a population of 23,000 to have almost 1,500 alarm systems in this city, we're over-alarmed. And I think we're over-alarmed simply due to the fact that there's been no consequences to getting an alarm and having it go off.
I think, though, as the future, as we go forward, we're going to see a higher percentage of alarms. And nationally, over 50% of the businesses have alarm systems in them, and nationally, over 20% of the residences have alarms in them. So we're not even really close to that number, I don't think.
Unless lightning hits.
Well,
Let me ask a question. Just a suggestion, why could not we have a code system that the alarm system give me when I get my alarm, and I register that with the police department? and I come to work in the morning in a hurry, and I reach and unlock my door, run into the phone ringing back there, and my alarm system goes off, and here comes 3 police cars screaming across town. When I could have picked the phone up and said, "This is Jim Mills, my code is 2489-3661. That immediately canceled that call.
That's what
Well,
we're
that's
talking about.
exactly what we're working on. We actually have a similar thing like that in place already with our central station. The ones that we're talking about that end up getting dispatched is those that the alarm owner maybe at the time was not sure if he needed the police or not, so he didn't call to cancel it. Maybe the alarm company tried to reach them to verify the alarm while the alarm system was using the telephone to dial out. And if they don't get an answer, they're going to dispatch right away. But we actually do have something similar. A good many alarms go off, in fact, a very large number of alarms go off that the police department never hears about, and it's because of the system
Right.
that you're talking
Right, and on
about.
top of that, we don't answer the alarms anymore. The alarms don't come to the police department.
Go to
They go
911.
to another party, and that party calls us. And
That's what, I've got an alarm system in an apartment complex, and it goes off. They call me. I check it, and the lady just unlocked the door and went in.
Right.
And I call the alarm system and say, "Forget it." They say, "Well, we got to call the police department."
Right.
So we need a system that would eliminate calling the police department. and
You're
have-
right, Mr. Mills, there are other options as well.
Yeah.
Just like you've got your tenants that call you, alarm owners can actually, like if it's an elderly parent, they can have their children that were called where they could come over first, or the next door neighbor, or there's any one of a lot of alternatives before it goes to the 911 center and you get a full emergency response.
That's right.
And a lot of those options need to be looked at too.
So y'all gonna get together and maybe work up a proposal
Yes.
as far as for some changes?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
Thank you.
we've
Yes.
got on the agenda item G, which talks about this, and it is a request that I placed on the agenda for a stay of the enforcement. It seems appropriate to talk about it now as we are talking about it. And in part, the original ordinance itself was established for these chronic abusers. And
Right.
we talked about it as these negligent operation or negligent or careless maintenance. And those are those 3 times a night type people.
Right.
And so I personally don't have a lot of sympathy for that type of chronic abuser, but I am concerned about how we've implemented some of the ordinance in a sense from the smaller users. We do have a problem with burglaries in town, and what I've heard back from some of these smaller people is that they've been ticketed and they're actually considering turning off their alarm, which is the last thing we want.
Right, and
as
some have done that, and some have asked us to not dispatch police.
Right.
Go down the contact list, but don't send the police.
And I know y'all talked about together, y'all would like 90 days to put together a report. I'd
Or
prefer
maybe
to...
not even that long.
Well, my preference is to offer a stay of enforcement for roughly 45 days, and for y'all to come back with a solid recommendation on our second meeting in August, which would be August the 21st. So I'd like to go ahead and make that motion that we have the mayor and task a team, including the police chief and interim fire chief and Mr. Pittman and others, to review and revise, make recommendations for revisions on the false alarm ordinance. And in the interim, we have a stay of enforcement for the current ordinance, and I do that in the form of a motion.
May I be heard?
So we have a motion to second. We've had plenty of discussion here. All those in...
Wait. Not necessarily enough discussion. I don't think we need to be staying enforcement of any ordinance. We have adopted the ordinance. If there needs to be revision, fine-tuning, so forth, yes, we certainly need to do that. We have proposed that the parties get together and come up with any suggestions they have for fine-tuning the ordinance. I think staying an ordinance sends very much a wrong message to those chronic abusers, if no one else, that they don't really mean that.
Well, I know that we don't want to name names, but I'm not aware, and I'm just speaking from personal knowledge right now, of anyone who would be considered a chronic abuser since the ordinance was put into place. In other words, everyone that I know of is doing everything they can to reduce false alarms.
Man, I've got.
Well, I say that, Clark, based on what you said, because you were talking about, this one had it this month, and then the next month they had another one, next
Oh,
month they
yeah,
had
no,
another.
absolutely.
You described them as
Absolutely.
chronic.
But we're talking about the people that have been to court so far, we're talking about systems that are 30 to 40 times as big as a residence, has 150 users.
That's something that may need to be fine-tuned.
Right, but,
That's a point, one person.
Right.
And let me say this about that too. We've already given alarm owners 2 free months out of this calendar year, January and February, when their alarms are going off. And in 3 months, now you say there are no habitual violators.
well, now
but
it
in
depends
thr-
on how you define habitual.
Well, I would
You
say
define
3
over
months, 3 months in a 3-month period is a chronic violator. That's once a month. Some people don't have any go off in a year. Some people have never had any go off the
That's
entire times they've had their alarms.
That is true.
And the people that we're talking about that are coming to court now are coming up on the 4th offense in less than 3 months. So I think, Mr. McLaurin, you're right. I think we would be sending the wrong message if we stayed this ordinance. Now, if it needs tweaking, we can certainly look at it. But now I would also remind the board that this is nothing more than a continuation and an update of the ordinance that was passed 20 years ago in the 1980s. This is nothing that did not work then. It was just dropped by the wayside when the police department was not the answer point and it switched to 911. We never changed the code ordinance where we could enact it and enforce it. And that's the reason we are where we are right now. But anybody that's had a year's worth in 3 months, and they're scheduled to be in court, I just don't have any sympathy for them, because that's our officers and our fire trucks that are running up and down the road. And I think if y'all will give us some time, we can, just a little bit of time, I think we can fix this without just putting everything on hold and it going back to free false alarms again.
Plus, I'm not convinced we can, by board order, stay enforcement of city orders.
Something
It's already been adopted by ordinance.
I think you can. The board makes a finding of fact that they need to go on, that they can stay the enforcement of it. And that would suspend enforcement until such time as the board makes a decision.
Does some of our other aldermen have questions or statements?
Just a question on the state. I mean, it would seem to me we're changing ordinance, which would, unless it's an emergency situation, I guess that's what we would have to do. It would take 30 days to take effect, changing the ordinance anyway.
So these habitual people would be back in court anyway. Ms. Self, did you have a question?
I couldn't hear what
The attorney was
the
saying.
attorney was saying,
I just
but
said,
I do have a problem with the state.
I just said myself that I felt like you could stay the enforcement of the ordinance if the board made sufficient findings of fact that it was necessary for the public safety and health and interest of the citizens. Mr. McLaurin said he didn't think that you could stay, and while I'm not totally disagreeing with him, I think that the board could take that action if it felt it was necessary, if it made the findings of fact. What the Alderman is saying is that even if you did rescind the ordinance, it would take 30 days to change it, to be in effect. So what he's saying basically is those persons who had been found in violation would still be in violation.
Correct.
Now, whether they had to go to court and that, and whether it was continued or the court made the decision would be a different matter.
And of course, the judge can also hear if you have people that are legitimately trying to make.
Right, and that's what we're doing now.
And he has discretion to,
And we've talked about that,
you know.
the judge and I.
But he can't
And
really
the
find them.
conversations of the group might also include the city attorney and you talking some more with the judge.
Right.
Yes,
Do y'all think y'all could turn it around quicker than
sure.
45, I mean, get together
I
and
think we could
talk about
probably do it by
tweaks?
the next board meeting if we needed to.
The June the 19th board meeting?
If y'all just give us a little time, if y'all just leave the ordinance as it is, give us some time to work on this, I think we can get it fixed. But I don't think we ought to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because this ordinance is working. And it was well thought out, it was well designed, and it's not broken. I don't think we need to fix it.
We hear call for the question.
I think I quoted somebody else on that.
Make the motion. I don't care if we don't.
All right, we have a motion and a second that we put a 45-day stay on this ordinance and to form a committee to re-examine it. All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand, please. We can get out of it, Cal. All those opposed, raise your hand. So y'all gonna get it worked together
Yes, sir.
and report back to us by
I'll be
June.
By the next meeting.
By the next meeting.
I'll be sure we get this done. I'll also talk with Judge Ishii again about the things that we've already discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Board.
Well, so I think our cemetery ladies came in, Ginger and April. How y'all doing this evening?
Apologize for our tardiness. We made a mistake in location.
Oh, where did you go? I'm curious.
We went to two locations. We went to the courthouse, both courthouses.
We don't have anything to do with it.
Completely our fault.
We apologize.
Yes, we do. My name is Ginger Tedder. This is my colleague April Deal. We're both teachers from Armstrong Middle School. We're here tonight seeking your endorsement for a project that will ultimately be a partnership, we hope, with the City of Starkville, Mississippi State University, and our school district. I provided a document. I don't know if you have time to look at that, outlining the project. It basically will begin with research from our students. Ms. Deal and I teach English, and we will have our advanced English students. She's going to explain it a little further. Our advanced English students do the research, so I'll let Ms. Deal explain the research.
Okay. In September, we're going to introduce them to the research process. We're also going to, using the research that we're both doing, we're going to take them on a tour of the Oddfellow Cemetery and point out some prominent figures that had some type of impact on Starkville. We're also going to take them to Mississippi State University to do research in their library, as well as the Starkville Public Library. They will be using this research and creating biographies. And then with those biographies, around November, we're going to pick 10 to 15 of those, and with our help, they're going to create sketches that will be performed at a candlelight tour in April.
And that candlelight tour will take place April 15th and 17th. That is our proposed date. We've been in contact with various city departments, Chief Lindley. We've been in touch with interim chief at the fire department, as well as the street department, to discuss our options and what we need to take into consideration in planning this event. Our ultimate goal is to create a unique learning opportunity for our students primarily, but also to celebrate our rich history in Starkville. I myself have learned a lot just in the preliminary stages of this about some of our ancestors and the people that built Starkville. I had not appreciated that fully. And we hope to, foster that with our students and also our community, because we feel if we do not know that, then probably, many other community members do not as well. This will be similar to Tales from the Crypt, which is a Columbus event, with just a Starkville twist on it. And again, it will take place April 15th and 17th at Oddfellow Cemetery. We are looking for grant funding, so we do not anticipate there being any type of monetary support needed from the city. We basically just need your endorsement that you're behind us, because we fully anticipate to publicize this and hope that it will be a positive point of publicity for our city. We're going to work with Mississippi State University as well. We are covering some of their past presidents. We're covering prominent members of Starkville that affect all of us. But we, again, are just seeking your endorsement today. No monetary funds or anything of that nature. And we're basically here to get that and to answer any questions that you have, because we hope that this will be a quality event and a learning experience for all of us.
Any questions by board members?
Mayor,
Ms. Self.
Ms. Self, down there.
Yes, myself.
I have a question, because I want to be clear on this. I read your proposal, and it's great. And you talk about our heritage and learning to appreciate it, and our students learning to appreciate our heritage. I don't have any problems with it taking place and then I'm doing something we should never do, and that's assume when you say Oddfellow Cemetery, it's on University Drive.
Yes, ma'am, let me clarify.
Okay.
I think
Let me
I can
finish it,
answer.
and then I think maybe
Okay.
we'll pull it
I
together.
know where you're going.
But your study will come from both
All
cemeteries in order
cemeteries.
to appreciate the heritage of Starkville, Oktibbeha County.
Yes, it will be an all-around tour, not just
Yes.
of people buried in Oddfellow Cemetery.
All right.
That is just the event
location.
location.
Okay.
We will cover, we've also been to Oddfellows on 82. April and I have been there.
Because there's
And,
some rich heritage.
and there's definitely, and Ms. MacArthur has actually told me that you were the contact person for that cemetery and some others as well. So we will hopefully be working with you on that. But yes, ma'am, we want it to be an inclusive event.
Okay.
Yes,
Well, I have attended the Tales from the Crypt before. It's a wonderful event.
yes.
It'd be nice to have something like that here.
That's not my idea for it.
A well thought out, well proposed event, leads to tourism possibilities, all sorts of things for the future.
Our goal is to make it an annual event. This is not a one-time event. We hope that it will be a stepping stone to an event like Columbus has, which I graduated from the Math and Science School, so I took part in Columbus, so I do have an idea of what it takes to do one of those, and I took part in theirs.
I would move then that the city endorse, support the Starkville Living Legacies proposal presented by Armstrong Middle School faculty.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those who have heard the motion and the second, if you're in favor of this, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
This brings us down to the mayor's business. It's consent. Board business, the first item is consent. It brings us to the...
May I excuse me just 1
Yes.
second? Ms. Spruill, on the first item on board business, placement of flag holders and so forth, there is no problem of which we are aware that this might cause, just something that they would propose to do.
No, sir, nothing that I'm aware of. Ms. MacArthur has been in touch with me about it, and I asked her if she wanted to come forward, and she indicated that there was nothing other than a request from the Veterans Association or American Legion about doing this. So there is no concerns from any source that I've been made aware of.
Brings us down to item B, which is authorization of Trustmark National Bank as the paying agent for the agreement concerning the city of Starkville, Mississippi General Obligation Public Improvement Note Series 2007. Ms. Brooke, can you tell me what this is? I thought we'd already done this.
This is the last step, Ms. Outlaw was more familiar with this
Okay,
process
is this the
than I am.
last step of these notes that we borrowed for the water?
This is the paying, maybe the paying agent.
We didn't do that last time.
Ms. Outlaw, we have done it at some point previously. I'm not for sure how it fit with the bond language, but we know we approved Trustmark for something previously as relates to these particular bonds.
We approved, Trustmark bid on it.
Okay, just want to answer.
One of you making a motion?
You know, of course, we don't have a document in here or anything.
I'm looking at that.
I mean, is there, this is, I just, Owen Perkins, I like you, think we have done this, but, you know, it's not worth arguing about.
Go ahead and make another motion.
Again, don't have a document with language in it or anything in the packet.
Hey,
I would,
if you look at this agreement,
yeah,
it's actually an agreement saying Trustmark hereby acknowledges receipt of resolution naming a paying agent on May 15th, 2007. Is that what you're remembering?
yeah, and, you know, I thought that we did that.
Oh, I mean,
This is an agreement concerning the city of Starkville obligation. They acknowledge receipt, as you indicate, and hereby.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
Society contract for additional duties of the transport by the sanitation department. I believe that,
I'll ask Ms. Sproul to go over this for me.
yes, would you mind, Ms. Sproul?
I'll be happy to, Mayor. This was from the last board meeting, and y'all had handed it back to Mr. Favor, or had requested that he put it in a different format.
Or
And
should Mr. Favor be the one going over?
well,
didn't know
I mean,
you-
I kind of drafted it and sent it to him.
He's pointing at you and you pointing at him.
I understand. Well, let me be clear. I drafted it and then sent it to him, and he approved what I drafted.
Okay.
So that's the extent of it, but it clarifies or goes into a little bit more detail exactly what the city's obligation is through the sanitation department and what the Humane Society will
All right, why
do.
don't you go through it point by point quickly with us?
Okay, essentially it is regarding transport of carcasses, euthanized or dead animals from the Humane Society to the MSU Vet School. And the transport has been an issue with the Humane Society because they don't have a truck and they didn't have the personnel to do it. So there's some history that the police department has been doing it, but that's been a manpower issue for us. So in an effort to compromise and satisfy both parties, the sanitation department is going to take it upon themselves to use the truck.
So the change there was from the Humane Society truck to sanitation
Well,
department.
Humane
truck.
Society didn't have a truck. It's from the
I
police
know,
department to the...
That was the point.
Yes,
yeah.
it was from the police
Okay.
department to the sanitation department. The truck has been transferred from the police department to the sanitation department, and it will reside at the Humane Society. The Humane Society's obligation is to put the carcasses in 3
Proper bag.
garbage bags and have them frozen. The sanitation department will pick them up twice per month on Wednesdays unless designated otherwise for some reason beyond the control of either party, and they'll modify that if necessary in writing at a future date. The sanitation will get a pass from the Humane Society for authorized entrance into the vet school. The Humane Society will assist with the transport 2 separate times to familiarize the sanitation department personnel with the process. The truck will be housed at the Humane Society, as I mentioned. Sanitation is responsible for decontamination and disinfection of the truck at the end of each transport, and for servicing, which will include maintenance and gas. The fuel will be provided by the sanitation department, and it will be available as the sanitation department needs. The sanitation department has no responsibility for picking up any other animals as outlined in the amendment, and then the Humane Society agrees to provide the sanitation department with an accurate count of the carcasses that are transported each month.
Humane Society has looked at this revised agreement and
I haven't talked with Ms.
regardless, it certainly seems satisfactory in terms
I wanted
of,
to clarify, you said the sanitation department is responsible for the cleaning of the truck?
Yes. And that was the agreement that was originally worked out between Ms. Boyd and
it now
Dr. Wall.
to me seems more clear and places responsibility for things.
Point of clarification is that the truck will be housed at the city animal shelter. It is not, the Humane Society doesn't have that facility. That
Okay.
facility is in
I can certainly change that to reflect that it is the city's property.
So it will not in number 5 be housed.
Well, it's housed
On
in
the
the
premises.
city. It's the city's, but it's the city's animal shelter.
Right.
It is not the property of the Humane.
So we're talking about that, it'll be stay at the animal
Yeah.
shelter.
Yes.
Okay,
I
let's alter that,
Oh.
housing. With that change, I would move approval of the amendment to the agreement between the City of Starkville, Oktibbeha County Humane Society for management and operation of the animal shelter.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Sproul. That brings us to the Budget Committee report.
Alderwoman Self, Alderman Mills, and I met with the Starkville Electric Department, who presented the first draft of the 2007-2008 budget, and as usual, Mr. Hadaway did an outstanding job, and this year we had Tommy Sullivan along with us. It is a budget that at this time does not include any rate increases to the residents. It covers a significant amount of equipment, as well as work to be done for the underground operations and in essence to make our lines and our systems better. There was an extensive conversation around salaries. We do have some considerable salary issues, not only in the electric department, of course, where we are below the regional average, and that does affect our ability to attract and retain employees. But that being said, it was just the first conversation. It's our intention to have an additional discussion or two prior to the next board meeting when the Starkville Electric Department budget would be presented for consideration and adoption. Their fiscal year, of course, is different than the general budget, where theirs starts July 1st, as opposed to the general budget, which starts October 1st. But it was a real good start to the 2008 budget year.
Yeah. Is that it? Consideration by request by Gregory Perkle, representing the Medical Development Properties LLC for a 10-year ad valorem tax exemption in accordance with the Mississippi Code Section 2731-101 of 1972 as amended. How are you tonight?
Doing fine, thank you, sir. This is what you have before you is an application for a 10-year exemption. This is a facility that was built. It's used for radiology, MRI services, biological, scientific research, primarily the scientific research part. The building was built, as I appreciate it, it's not an MRI that was just brought into the building. The building was actually built around the equipment that was housed there. The university actually is doing the research in this facility. As you see on the application, the property itself was purchased for $915,000 approximately, and the cost of the building was $5,074,000. To the extent that it's important to you, it was constructed using bond proceeds, so the scientific nature of it was at least approved by the state of Mississippi.
Council, don't we have 3 of these issues to go through? This would be stage 1 of 2 other. Would you kind of give the board a slight enlightenment, please?
Well, as stated, the section that the board needs to look at is section 2731-101. And the first step, this is the first step. If you remember, this board, and I know Mr. Perkins and Mr. McLaurin and Mr. Davis dealt with this before, but this board also dealt with a request from Webex some time ago, which the steps are similar, but Webex was different in the fact that they had an existing exemption that the board was adding to. But this is the first step in the process, which is the actual application, and there's 2 other steps that be certified that by the state that is appropriate and acceptable to the state, and then the 3rd step is the granting of the exemption by the board. Now, the reason why Mr. Perkle is referring to the scientific nature of that is because the statute is very strict on the types of businesses that can be exempt, and that's why it's important, and that's why he's emphasizing to you the scientific nature of this particular property.
Ms. Outlaw, do you have any type of an estimate for the city's portion of these taxes, how much that would be if we were to provide this abatement?
Yes, as per your comment today, the 14,500 approximately we would be exempt.
So it's about $14,500 per year from a city standpoint.
Right, because the school would be exempt.
Mr. Attorney, are we legally required to grant this exemption?
No, sir, Mr. Perkins, you're not.
And I didn't think so. I want to give an echo. I've been through this several times. Mr. Perkle, let me tell you where I stand on this. I read this last night, and I didn't even know where this was, okay? I didn't know where the structure or the facility was, and let me say, I supported the permit, the issuance of a permit for that location. But just to be frank with you, I'm not in favor of this exemption because we need this money for infrastructure. This year, the board had to divvy up or divide money for streets and drainage and ditches, and each all got $200,000. And with my $200,000, I was only able to do 3 streets and a half of a ditch. And so, I cannot vote to give up any money, from the general fund. I support the facilities. I'm glad it's here. It's good competition. It's healthy for our environment. But from here on out, every exemption that comes for this table, you can bank on it. I'm going to vote against it. Because we need to keep all this money here. If we don't have revenue to come into our bank account, then we'll have to look at other ways of getting revenue in. So I just want to be frank with you. I support you. I'm glad you're here.
Right.
It's good for our community. But that's what I just want to have that discussion with you.
Sure.
And so if there's a motion to approve, I'm just going to go on record to vote against.
Right, and of course, it's just hopefully that we're come to you on the front end so that we're not taking money out of the general budget. And our hope would be through these exemptions, and I think the purpose of them in the statute is to try to build the infrastructure and to bring and attract so that when industry does see that the city will help them to come in, that they can bring both the facilities and the jobs and the extra school taxes as well, because we're not asking to be exempt from school district taxes.
Of course, can't under the law.
Correct. That's right. Under this one, we cannot.
Any further questions? Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure it will come as no surprise to some of you that I will be voting no on this request because I was the one that voted no on the facilities to begin with. And I cannot compare this to an industry because I can't see where we would be getting the same from this radiology clinic or medical development, whatever it's called, that we would be getting from the industry, so I cannot vote to give this.
And Madam Alderman, if I can just hopefully, and I'm not trying to dissuade your opinion, but hopefully this would give you some public-private partnerships with the university as well. This would be an encouragement so that the state would not have to spend as much, and it would bring more property into the city. And also it does bring, at the end of the 10-year period, it's not eligible for exemption again, so it would actually put it for future use, if it's property that's not being used right now, back into your tax rolls to the extent that that's helpful.
Thank you.
So do we have anyone that's going to make a motion on this?
Mr. Perkle, hopefully you understand my position on it. You're certainly welcome here, but I just think we need to keep the money in all the tax money we can get. I'm glad to have you here, but otherwise I can't not support it.
I understand.
And I'm going to be consistent with everybody that's sitting at the table, regardless of where they're from and who they represent.
Right. I hope it does not deter the growth of the industry, but I understand your position completely and absolutely.
Mr. Perkle, it doesn't look like we even have a motion. We appreciate you being here tonight.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your consideration.
This brings us down to consent F. By the way, Richard, I believe you had that placed on there. Would you mind being our representative to find out the information?
Well, my intent was to actually have Jeanette Self and I both attend because her and I had previously been on the committee with the university to work on the shuttles we have.
That'd be great if y'all would. That brings us down to Infrastructure Committee report.
Mr. Mayor and Board, the Infrastructure Committee had a lengthy meeting yesterday in preparation for this board meeting in an attempt to clear our slate of things that were in committee at that particular point, and we have a number of things to report to you tonight and a number of specific recommendations. And we'll just take these one by one. In the first of these, the police chief appeared before the committee, the matter having been referred to the committee by this board, to request certain improvements in regard to the firing range, improvements designed to help that facility become more of an educational training facility as well as a practice firing range for law enforcement in this general area. And that particular request was certain renovations and so forth in the amount of about $2,000. In addition, the police chief requested, in part as a subsidiary to this firing range thing, or request, that the police department budget be amended in the amount of $19,500 to provide funding for certain supplies and equipment to be used here in City Hall and also at the firing range. There, of course, was also the request of the renovation of certain facility in City Hall, but the police chief and the committee discussed this and decided that that was not a suitable request at this time, depending on what might ultimately happen with the construction of the Justice Complex. So that was eliminated from the request, any renovation of City Hall. So what comes before you tonight, and the committee recommends that the amount of $21,500 be expended on range improvements, including the purchase of certain equipment and machinery to facilitate operations here at the police department and educational transformation facility at the range. And I would move acceptance of this request and board approval of this request.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. Next item, Mr.
Okay, and I will skip around a little bit. The city engineer had recommended that the board take a look at the proposals received for the bicycle pedestrian path that has been proposed and for which grant funding has been secured. The board referred the proposals to the committee. We have reviewed the proposals with the city's engineer's recommendation that one appears to be a better proposal than the other. We had two proposals in response to the city's request for proposals. One submitted by Neil Schaefer Engineers, a well-known engineering firm in the state. The other by Weatherford McDade, also a well-known planning development company in the state. The city engineer, and Bill, if I put words in your mouth, please take them out. The city engineer said after reviewing the proposals, and the committee agreed with this assessment after taking a look at the proposals, it appears that the proposal of Neil Schaefer Engineers, both being very qualified firms, but Neil Schaefer Engineers, given their experience in this specific type of project and area, appeared to be the best proposal. And so the committee would recommend for your consideration the acceptance of Neil Schaefer Engineers as the project engineers for the bicycle pedestrian path. That, of course, subject to negotiation of an acceptable cost estimate for engineering services. And, of course, we would expect that the city attorney would be part of that, reviewing any proposed contract and so forth. And I would so move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Continued under advisement in the committee was the latter district proposal. the committee is simply not ready at this time to move this forward, and so it will continue on the committee's agenda for some future action. Also continued without a specific committee recommendation at this particular time was the request for the traffic signal videos that we have talked about. Remember our presentation of this some months ago. The committee nevertheless thought that even though it would not move forward a specific recommendation, it certainly did want to study and research the proposal a little bit more, specifically proposing that the police chief contact the 3 major vendors of these traffic signal video cameras for written proposals from them to come as rapidly as is possible for such proposals. When those proposals come, we will distribute a copy of each proposal to every member of the Board of Aldermen, so at your leisure you will have time to look at these proposals. The committee will then further study the matter, reviewing the proposals and so forth, inviting representatives of these companies to appear if thought necessary, and of course inviting any member of the Board of Aldermen to appear and sit with us at any of these presentations as your pleasure might dictate. So essentially we're saying that there is no specific committee recommendation, approve, not approve. We would like to study it a little more, but specifically with the process of securing proposals from at least 3 major vendors, of which we are aware. There may be one or more others, and that these proposals will come to the committee. Committee would study these, ask the vendors to make presentations. We thought it'd be more appropriate to do in a committee situation setting than an hour or so in the middle of a board meeting. And then, of course, inviting all the aldermen to continue to come and sit with us at any of these presentations if it was their pleasure. So we are not recommending specific action other than the police chief proceeding with the securing of the written proposals. And then we will bring that forward again with a committee recommendation. Yes, ma'am.
Once chief secures this, you, the committee, you're not gonna hold it for a year or so before you decide to let us know that he's gotten it. And
Goodness no, the minute we get copies of the proposals, you will have copies of the proposals, so that in the interim while the committee is studying, you'll have a chance to review the proposals and we'll be that much ahead of the game.
thank you.
Did that stated sufficiently?
I think we no longer want to be the black hole.
We are not the black hole.
Thank you.
Though some prefer us to be the black hole on certain matters.
What's the next committee report?
You mean the next item on my report?
From the infrastructure committee.
Okay, thank you. There was also the proposal from the Public Services Director, Doug Devlin, that the board might want to give consideration to any type of logo or design or such lettering, graphics on the water tanks, since there will be a water tank repainting that will be coming up in the fall. Of course, you keep in mind the work that we had already done on the Scales Street water tank relative to lettering and design and so forth. The committee recommends that if the Board of Aldermen would like to seek designs other than the one that we have most recently used, that we have a design competition from any interested party, whether it be educational institutions or individuals or groups or garden clubs or whatever, that the city could review and select any changed design. The committee recommends that if the board wishes to change design, that we hold a design competition.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize a design competition with a deadline of September 15, 2007, and that the designs be turned into our CAO with a committee consisting of Ms. Spruill, Mr. Devlin, and Mr. Ben Griffith. With the designs being for the water tower.
We have a second?
Can I have a question real quick?
Sure.
I like the idea, but there may be some art students at Mississippi State that may want to become involved. And I'm not sure whether the 15th of September gives them an adequate amount of time to.
Gentlemen, I'm flexible. The reason I said that, Mr. Devlin, we can extend that. Mr. Devlin said the painting season would need to be around November 1. If you'd like me to extend it, that's no objection.
If you don't mind.
What date would you prefer, gentlemen?
Is October 15th too late?
October 15th is fine. Mr. Devlin, that's fine. I'll accept that as a friendly amendment, October 15th.
Then I'll second.
We have a motion second. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
No, I think that gets the report for tonight. Anything I have omitted?
Thank you for your infrastructure committee report. That brings us down to discussion of replacement of a traffic signal at the intersection of Reed Road and West Side Drive.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
I ask that this item be placed on the agenda, but to be honest with you, I don't want any discussion on it. No. You can ask questions, but I've already talked with our city engineer, Mr. Webb, and he has talked with Chief Lindley, and they don't see any problem with that because that is a dangerous intersection. And if you recall, they did do a study at my request, and a three-way stop was not appropriate. It was too dangerous. So they find no problem with the request to place a traffic signal light at the intersection of Reed Road and West Side Drive, and along with that, lowering the speed limit on Reed Road to
What is
30
it?
miles per hour.
Lowering it to 30 miles an hour.
Yes,
Let's have some discussion on that.
okay?
Now, I'm going to support the traffic light. Now, and Chief Lindley know at one time in the past that the speed limit on Reed Road, and Mr. Webb would know, was that it's been tried and tested before. It was at 30 miles an hour, and then we put it back up to 35 miles an hour. I think it would, and of course, I want to work with the distinguished alderman from Ward 7, and of course, I didn't see it on the agenda as lowering the speed limit. I'm prepared to second her motion, but I'm not prepared to, we both share that ward over there to some extent, or that area, not ward, but that area. And I didn't mean to get into this conversation with the distinguished alderman from Ward 7, but I'm prepared to second her motion. But I don't want us to just sit here tonight and just vote to lower the speed limit. We've been that route before. It used to be, Chief, at some point to 30 miles an hour. We raced back to 35, and I think a good starting point would be the installation of the traffic light. And so, if the board wants to look at that further, we all concerned about the public health and safety of the area, but I think it'd be best just to proceed with the traffic light tonight and let Mr. Webb and the chief come back to us at a future meeting on the speed. That's what's on the agenda. Hopefully that we can move further along this meeting by just getting the light approved. And I wasn't going to have any discussion to my distinguished colleague who lives just a few feet from my house, but I wasn't going to have any discussion with her. But I am prepared to support it, and hopefully we can get a traffic light up. But I would like to, hopefully my colleague from 7 would agree to allow Mr. Webb and Mr. Lindley to study that. But we have been to the 30 miles an hour before. It just wasn't really workable. So hopefully we can do that, and those are my comments, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
I thank Alderman Perkins for his comment, and the reason lowering the speed limit was not on this agenda, because that was proposed to me by Mr. Webb this afternoon after the agenda had been printed. that in addition to the signal light, that it would be wise if we lower the speed limit to 30 miles an hour on Reed Road. So that's why I added that to my request.
And your request is a form of a motion?
My request is in the form of a motion.
You gonna
That
second
replace-
her request, Mr. Perkins?
For it to go to 30 miles an hour?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of her motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. We got 2 seconds down there. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
This brings us down to Mr. Corr's addition, the committee of a whole for the budget.
Yes, I had actually requested this, of course, to be put on here, and I'm sorry that I didn't get it on to have it actually printed on the agenda. This was something I know we've talked about before, and it's been sort of a contentious issue, so I don't mean to come off as a negative reflection in any way on Jeanette, Jim, or Matt, because I think they do an excellent job on the committee. When we talked about it before, the committee of the whole idea had come up, but I think the predominant proposal at the time was a committee of 5, and I was against that. And one of the last things that I had said was that I believe that we should either have a committee of 3 or less, or go ahead and involve the whole board. And so, with the recent $200,000 per ward appropriation for streets and drainage, really got my mind thinking about how important this, the city's budget is, and just how important and how much it affects us. And just sort of my thoughts on it are that it's something that really every member of the board does need to be involved in, because it's one of the single most important committee that we have, in my opinion. And the board may or may not agree with me, but I just kind of wanted to bring this up and re-explore that.
You can make it in the form of a motion, Rich.
Sure. I mean, is there need to be any discussion first, or I'll be willing to go
Make
ahead?
a motion first, and then we'll discuss it.
Okay, well, I make a motion then that the city move its budget committee to a committee of the whole.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion.
Mayor, if there's no questions, I'll call the question then.
All those in favor of the committee of the whole, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
We'll take a short break this time.
The passage of time. We have shared your joy at the birth of your children, and proudly we have watched them grow. We've taken care of your healthcare needs during the good times and the not so good. Your parents and grandparents have depended upon us. Together we have shared the struggles and the wonders of life. At Oktibbeha County Hospital, we are celebrating 30 years of being your lifelong choice in healthcare.
This brings us up to building codes and planning. Ben?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the first item before you this evening is a waiver of the building permit fee and modification of minimum parking requirements for the Quad County School located at 407 Industrial Park Road. Y'all should have a copy of the letter from Dr. Birchfield requesting waiver of the fees and also the parking requirements, which I'll explain in a moment. And there's also a floor plan layout for the proposed school in the existing building. The application to waive the fees, the estimate of the permit would be $273.60. Other than other city departments, the only allowance that we have is for the school board, and they have to make a formal request, which Dr. Birchfield has provided through his letter. I think that's pretty simple and straightforward, and I would ask the board to approve that waiver of the fee. The second item is regarding the parking. And the Quad County School, as y'all know, is not your typical school. Don't have a typical curriculum. They have different needs than a regular school would. The code requires 5 parking spaces per each classroom. In this case, there's 11 classrooms, and there'd be a requirement of 55 parking spaces. The principal, Mr. Hampton, there he is, and he is here this evening, has stated that the 36 spaces that are available on the site would accommodate their needs. The reason that I asked this to be taken to the board and not to the Board of Adjustment and Appeals is because decisions by the Board of Adjustment are permanent and run with the land, and I felt like it would be more appropriate if the board approved this specific waiver for this specific use at this specific property. So as long as the school board had the Quad County School there, the parking requirement would be waived. However, if the school board maintained the property through the lease and had another type of school or another type of project there, obviously the parking requirements would change, and they may not have the same situation that the Quad County School was. So I felt like it would be in the best interest of the city for the board to make the decision to allow the waiver for this specific use. So there's actually two items that y'all need to make a decision on regarding the Quad County School. And if there's any questions, Principal Hampton is here to answer any specifics. He's the principal for the Quad County School.
Mr. Mayor, let me briefly say this may pass by the board, but let me say preliminarily, I try to be consistent with all my actions here, and I certainly support the Starkville School District and the Quad School for their contribution to the community. But let me just let the record reflect that I cannot support this request, and it's probably going to pass by the board. But let me say the reason I want to be consistent. It's just like at the last meeting, when the meeting before last, when I indicated to Mr. Griffith that I was opposed to any waiver of any city requirement for Red Bud Springs subdivision. And once you start making exceptions, whether it's Starkville School District or John Doe or Mary Doe, then people start lining up and say, well, you did it for him, you did it for her. So I just want to make sure, just like I told the gentleman who was here for the exception tonight, my word is my bond. So if I'm not going to be in the business of granting exceptions for anyone, so I just want to make that clear. I'm not opposed to the Starkville School District, but I think we need to follow our city ordinances and requirements and not waive any fees and parking requirements or any kind of requirements. So, but there's no reflection on Mr. Hampton. I'm sure, I hear a lot of great things about what y'all are doing in the community, support the Starkville School District, but it's a matter of making sure of being consistency and following the law. And therefore, I must respectfully oppose this request.
Anyone else that would like to speak in regard to this?
Let me just say before the board takes this action, that I have some questions regarding whether or not this will be deemed to be an impermissible donation under state law. And I would like an opportunity to get an opinion about that before the board takes any action. It's my feeling that it probably is, but because the school district's involved, that there may be some allowance. But I would like an opportunity to do that before you take the vote on the waiver of the building permit.
Along those same lines, I'm not sure the city has the authority to waive the building permit. Now, as regarding impermissible donation, if the school district was so sufficiently stretched that they could not afford $273.60, the city would have the authority to grant to the school district. We can make a contribution to the school district. I just hardly think it's necessary. The principle was, waiving a thing just to show support. Nobody on this board does not support the school district, but I just don't think we can waive a building permit.
Mr. Mayor, if I may ask you a friendly question, we have that issue, and we have a lot of issues come up over the course of my time with the board, but do we have that issue with another, Mississippi State with Val Engineering or something? We couldn't do it, and my memory's kind of vague following on that.
Alderman Perkins, I have some vague recollection about the university requesting the waiving of a building permit, and we did not.
Right, that's what I thought. I wasn't for sure. That's why I didn't bring it up.
If the school district actually needed that form of contribution, that would be another matter. I hardly see that that's going to affect anything. Now, the parking is another matter. We're talking about the waiving building permit is all I'm talking about.
And that's all I'm referring to, too.
So let's move on to the parking aspect.
Well, I don't know, somebody may want to make a motion. I guess not.
I move that we allow the waiver of the minimum parking requirements due to the unique character of the school, with the proviso that this parking waiver is specifically tied to the Quad County School located at 407 Industrial Park Road.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on waiver of the parking tied strictly to the Quad County School. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Okay, Mr. Griffin, your next item.
Yes, sir. The next item is consideration for the adoption of proposed final plat policies to include financial assurances required for the subdivision code for the city of Starkville. The board has previously brought up the issue when it comes to final plats, approval of final plats in the city, and directed myself and Mr. Webb, city engineer, and the city attorney to provide policies and procedures regarding final plat approval. We've put these policies together for y'all's consideration. We've also included under item B, which came up at the last board meeting about a contract, and what we've proposed is a blank contract, which unfortunately the last page did not get included in your packet, so I've included that. Ms. Tyndall passed that out prior to the meeting. There was a final page to that, in case y'all were wondering. To cover everything, as far as if the option of a contract is used, we have a standard contract now that would be part of the application package that would go to the P&Z and also come before this board for approval. So that would be part of your approval. I think that the last time the question had come up about who approved the contract, who reviewed it, et cetera. Now we have a proposed one that can be brought forward and be part of the approval. So what I also did in anticipation, if we need to make any revisions or any corrections to the policies that we've brought forth, is I included in with your packet today a resolution, just a simple resolution that the board adopt these policies to direct staff, and also I included an item that it's at some point in the future when the subdivision ordinances are amended, that we include policies such as these or similar into the actual ordinance, so it won't have to be a separate standalone. So I don't know if y'all had a chance to look over everything. It seemed like it was a lot of information. If y'all have any questions, myself and, oh, Mr. Webb's not here. Myself and Mr. Favor can probably answer the questions any questions y'all may have.
A lot of stuff here, a lot of changes, unless there is a burning need to do something, we might ought to continue this under advisement till the next meeting, or take it under advisement.
Yes, sir. Just to let y'all know, we have three preliminary plats that are going forward to P&Z next week. So y'all will see preliminary plats at y'all's next meeting. Don't have any finals, but obviously y'all know that there's a lot of preliminaries out there floating around that are in the process, and and they, some may come up sooner than others. So
The only burning need, Alderman Warren, is that we really need to get a standardized contract that we can use. And as Alderman Perkins correctly stated at the last board meeting, the board needs to be the one to review it. We didn't have one, a standard one that we were using, and so we were just attempting to give you the opportunity to review this, and we understand that if this option is chosen in the future, we need to have, we anticipate these final plats coming up, and we need to have something in place to deal with this situation if this option is chosen again.
We understand that the board may want to consider even not allowing that as an option.
And that's certainly within your purview, but the board directed myself and the city engineer and Mr. Griffith to put together a contract for your review. And
we appreciate you doing this. Yeah. Now, let's talk legally and procedurally here. If we have preliminary plats stirring, they will fall under what is existing, or can they fall under what might be changed?
Well, they'll fall under what's existing now, but like I said, these are preliminary plats. They're not coming forward for final approval, at least not in the foreseeable next couple of weeks. But we do have some, y'all have approved several preliminary plats in the last couple of months that
So we
are
can
in the
make any
process.
changes, and those preliminary plats for final plat approval would have to meet the changes.
When they come forward for final.
They would.
Right.
Yes, sir.
And if we've not done the changes, when they come forth, we can delay approval of the final plat.
We could muddle through like we've been muddling through before.
Would this be subject to a 30-day period before going into effect upon approval, or would it go into effect immediately?
I drafted a resolution for immediately, but that can obviously be changed because it's a resolution.
It's done by ordinance, you know.
This is not a format for you to vote on it today. This is just for your general knowledge and discussion and you to input with Ben, myself, and Bill as to what you would like to see or not see. We would have to put it in a final amendment to our, it's, you know what I'm saying? This is not in the final format that it would be in. This is just basically for your review to go with, have a discussion, open forum discussion, you know, for any questions that you might have of us while we're here.
May I make a suggestion that we put this part that was left out with what you have in your packet and everybody take a look at it, review it?
Have it on the agenda for the next board.
Have it on the agenda for the next board meeting? If there's no opposition to that, we'll move on.
All right, sir, the last item that I have for you this evening is a petition to alter and correct a previously recorded plat for Country Club Estates subdivision Phase 1. Mr. Russ Rogers has prepared the petition. Just to kind of summarize what it is, there were two items that were recorded that need to be revised, and one is a scrivener's error for a measurement for 5 lots. The correction for this survey, for the survey line, and also a correction to the address. I shouldn't say an address, a street name. A street was named on a plat incorrectly. It was found after the recording that there was another street with the same name in the county. The street sign has been corrected to the proper address. What this petition will do is allow the recorded plat to be revised with a tape over with Miss Banks' office, and it will also it's expedient in the fact that the folks that have already purchased properties in the subdivision will not have to have their deeds amended, their deeds changed in any way. This can move forward. It's the simplest and cleanest way to amend the plat without replatting the subdivision and requiring the folks that have deeds recorded to resubmit those. So apparently Mr. Rogers has done this previously. I think he stated in his letter for Academy Village condominiums Phase 6. Just to address as far as the street names, what we're trying to do now on a preliminary plat, when they come forward, we have a street name on any right-of-way, whether it's private drive or not, and also go ahead and have street number or address numbers on a preliminary plat, so that when it does come to a final plat, that information is on the plat. It's already been approved by the postmaster, by Mr. Britt's office at the emergency office, and that when the final plat is recorded, that the address is already done, and it's also for building and construction permitting. So we're addressing that now. I believe all the preliminary plats y'all have seen have names on them. If not, I know that they've been coming. The ones y'all are going to see in the following, at y'all's next meeting is going to have street names on them.
Ms. Faber, you have reviewed this.
I have.
It meets all legal requirements in terms of what is proposed for correction of plats at the courthouse and so forth.
Yes. Yes, it does. And as I stated, that's my partner, but that was what was done on Academy Village also.
Mr. McLaurin, we were originally going to wait and bring this forward because Country Club Estates Phase 2 has a preliminary plat that's been approved, and obviously they're doing construction. When I first talked with Mr. Rogers, we were going to, and Mr. Webb included, we were going to wait until the Phase 2 final plat came forward and bring them both at the same time. That's what, if you're wondering about the dates on this. What's happened in the meantime, Mr. Jones has sold some properties, and the question has come up at some closings with the street names and also the legal description. So he came back and asked if we could go ahead and do this now rather than wait on the Phase 2 and do it then, because these questions are arising, and it's just kind of thrown up a red flag, which at the last minute, folks have had to scramble around for some closings. So this would kind of make it cleaner for their potential closings.
Okay. Mr. Mayor and Board, I would move approval of the petition of Frank Jones Development, LLC, for correction of the final plat of Phase 1 Country Club Estates, specifically with regard to street names, and certain lot dimensions. Does that get what the request is?
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion with a second. All of you have heard the discussion and the information. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, sir.
Office of City Clerk.
It's all, this meets legal requirements. The claims docket.
Yes, sir.
Move approve, Mr. Mayor. Second.
Motion to approve the claims docket with a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay.
Courts.
Mr. Mayor, let me just briefly be recognized. Mr. Mayor, I have no objection. Mr. Police Chief, I have no objection to Ms. Woods attending this seminar. And let me just say for the record here that there are two requests here before this board for Ms. Wood to, one to attend a leadership conference in Natchez for 2 days, and one to attend a Governor Sumner meeting on June 1, 2007. And I find that very good about her wanting to attend this, and I have no problem supporting it. But at the same time, the board needs to be fair and equitable in its decisions regarding attending conferences. Just a few meetings ago, the board, by majority vote, forced the city clerk to decide whether or not she was going to attend a conference at Mississippi State University or attend the MML, and the city clerk chose MML for the purpose of the record, Mississippi Municipal League, for the press and the public, and the city clerk chose the conference at Mississippi State, which cost $565. In light of that, I am of the position and opinion that the board needs to be very fair and equitable in its decision with all employees, and so to rectify the inequity as it exists with the city clerk with respect to her requests and those that we have approved for others, I'm going to offer two motions here, three motions actually, and I want to let you know what these motions are. I'm going to offer a separate motion to approve the request for each of the city clerks for the court matters, and I'm going to offer a motion regarding the city clerk. So, Mr. Mayor, my first motion is to request authorization for Deborah Wood to attend the Municipal Court Clerk Leadership Conference in Natchez, Mississippi, from June 10, 2007 to June 12, 2007. That's my first motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay.
Nay. Mr. Mayor, I move that we grant authorization for Deborah Wood to attend the Mississippi Judicial College Board of Governors Sumner meeting in Jackson, Mississippi on June 1, 2007.
She's already done that, obviously.
Well, it's on the agenda.
I know.
But
I see that.
Yes, sir.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Is that date incorrect?
That's what it says in the letter.
I'm off the motion because it's on the agenda, so unless somebody want to withdraw it.
What we provided me.
I'm sorry, what?
That's what was provided.
It's got an agenda attached that says June 1st.
That's what now?
That's the agenda. The meeting.
Apparently, it's already been done.
So, but do we still need approval?
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So your motion does approve her having gone to that?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Well, it's a retroactive approval, apparently.
Well, I don't think she spent the money. I think it's just a daytime thing.
It's making no kind of sense.
All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let's take a hand show, please. All those in favor of the motion, show your hand. 2, 3. All those opposed, show your hand.
I'm trying to get some sense out of this, because this is not even making any sense, because it says,
It's a little puzzling that somebody would go do something and then ask for permission afterwards.
I'm not voting for that.
Is this a result of the city's travel policy and so forth that was not done prior to the thing? Is this what we're dealing with?
I am not familiar with it. It was provided to me, and I don't know if she spent the night. I don't know enough about it to know if she spent the night. Obviously, Mr. Rook could be authorized.
Let's just hold this.
Let's just hold it. It's
And-
already happened, so. I'm
Alderman
not voting
Perkins,
for
just one thing, you addressed your comments to the police chief who's not making these requests for the
Well,
court
those are
clerk.
respectful, friendly, there's nothing controversial about it.
Let's hold this for further information, Ms. Sproul.
Yes, sir, no problem.
Yes, sir, I'll find out some more.
Mr. Mayor, my next motion is that I move that the board reconsider its action whereby it denied the city clerk, Ms. Marquita Outlaw, the opportunity to go to the Mississippi Municipal League Conference on June 24th through 28, 2007 in Biloxi, Mississippi, and that the board authorize the city clerk, Ms. Marquita Outlaw, the authority to attend that conference on June 24th through the 28th of 2007, that the city pay the registration fee together with any late fee, along with the lodging together with meals and official travel in the form of a motion.
Do we have a second to that motion?
Ms. Outlaw, do you want to go to the MML?
I would love to attend.
Then I have no problem seconding.
We have a motion with a second. I think all of you heard what Roy's motion was. Do we have any further discussion? If there's no further discussion, we will vote. All those in favor of Ms. Outlaw going to MML, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. You can only find a room. This brings us down to police, and the request here is Aaron Thompson taking permission to take 6 credit hours at Mississippi State University as it pertains to reimbursable educational courses at a cost of $2,300, Chief. I think the question is the cost for 6 credit hours.
And Mr. Mayor, may I say something?
Yes.
Chief, and understand, I support educational requests, but the dollar amount got my attention. I called Mississippi State this morning to find out the cost for a credit hour for beginning with the summer 2007. And for the undergraduate person who's a resident of Mississippi is $189.75 per credit hour. And for the graduate student or resident of Mississippi is $253. And let's assume, I think it's a graduate program.
Probably, yes, sir. I believe he has his undergraduate.
So if you multiply that times 6 hours, 253, that's not going to, maybe about, I don't have a calculator here, about $1,500 more or less. In our policy, 6.108 educational system that was approved and went into effect June 1, 1999, there are 2 relevant provisions here. One says that the eligible employees may be reimbursed only for courses of study that the city determines are directly related to the employee's present job. And that's what, I want to get some explanation on that. And secondly, item number 5 in that policy says that the city clerk will reimburse the employee at 1/2 the cost of tuition only. So if it's 253 times 6, then 1/2 is going to be like 1/2 of 1,500, whatever it multiplies out to. But the first hurdle is going to be, we have to make sure that's directly related. And Chief, I only just brought this up, make sure it complies with the policy. I wasn't trying to single your officer out because I support the educational, but we need to make sure that it's directly related. And I guess if you could address those, and if you're satisfied with that, then I'll defer to your judgment then. But we need to make sure that it's 1/2 the cost of tuition, and that $2,300 some dollars I saw on the agenda was rather healthy.
He thinks a bit high. Why don't we pass this and we have a chance to research?
Roy,
Unless
just,
somebody can help me with it.
I think we can help you.
you know, of course, again, I'm puzzled there. There's a little divergence between what is requested in the cover sheet of the thing and what is stated on the agenda. Plus, it appears that there are 3 courses listed. And so that, of course, would not be 6 hours if it's a traditional